So, right, morning, welcome everybody. It's magic morning, I believe. So poets and warriors and other fictitious and fictional beings lurking around in the, I don't know, fairy glens and forests or something. So before I get myself completely into trouble, you better take over.
Well, I'm going to hand the baton straight to Trevor. It was his mulling over around poets and warriors that got us going. So let him launch in, and I'll add my bits as we go.
Okay, morning everyone. So what was I mulling over? I was looking at the American elections and just having a look at local government leaders and how they tend to just voice their opinions and what they are doing in the marketplace. And thinking back to Ed, who seems to have this warrior spirit in him, but at the same time, we know he's a poet and a bard. And I was thinking at the most base level of everyone, no matter where they are on Maslow's hierarchy, but let's just say people have self-actualized right to the top of the hierarchy. Do they still fall back to a base level? Is there something of a warrior in almost everyone that makes them want to compete at all costs, or just want to take their head off someone that is irritating them in some way? So perhaps I'm talking about myself here. So all of you, I gave you some good advice yesterday, and that's to duck. So if you see me doing this, Trevor, no, okay, good. No, Trevor's too slow. And then I thought, well, you know, even though I tend to, and as a youngster, have been extremely aggressive, and I haven't lost any of that. It's just that I don't duck as fast, so I try and withhold that because I'm starting to get too many bruises. There's also something of the poet. And I wanted to ask someone who's probably got a deeper academic understanding of what this is. And that's when Steve Carter came up with someone, I forgot to take the name, and the book, and what it was all about. So I was asking, is there, and you know, I was also thinking about Vernet. To me, you know, Vernet tended to unravel something of the poet in Vernet, as opposed to, my view is, I see a warrior in Vernet. And it's quite interesting as to when we might, if other people feel like this, when we might feel that our poetic side is coming out. Maybe that's emotion, but then also the warrior side. And then I think that that's also a high emotion. So I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, and I needed someone to actually clarify this thought for me. Are there two sides to us or more to us? And can we simply think of it as being, sometimes we're a poet, sometimes we're a warrior, and we're able to drift in and out of that when the time requires?
I'm not sure, Trevor. You seem to be drifting in and out all the time. I'm not sure if that's just a function of your age or your thought processes, but...
You didn't duck.
I don't need to duck at this distance. Your arms aren't that long. So yeah, I got that one sorted out at the moment. So yeah, let's stay virtual for the rest of our lives, and then I don't have to duck.
Yep.
Right, so Ed, I think we better get across to you next.
Right. Is that because I ramble like the old man as well?
Well, I've just got on my screen, I've got three old men with hats on their heads in the middle of my screen, so I thought I'd better just tick them off before they fall asleep behind their visors.
Yeah. I think Lee posed a question, can you be both poet and warrior? What are the characteristics of both? And in which direction do you tend? which I found a very strange phrase. In which direction do you tend? Yeah, but never mind. There is a Warrior Poet Society. It's if you check out the US website, warriorpoetsociety.us, on there they say the state that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Now, that is a slight misquote from a Greek general from about 400 BC, but it's roughly the right quote. But the website seems to be all about selling guns and other weapons. And it has some really, really scary knives that Crocodile Dundee would really love. So it kind of tells you something about the American psyche, I think. And it glorifies gun ownership. And I think we glorify warriors. Perhaps thinking about the samurai or the Zulu, rather than some unfortunate soul ordered over the top in the First World War, who then got shot down in a hail of bullets and ended up bleeding out face down in the mud. So perhaps we ought to think about warriors more in the terms of that chap underneath the slab in the tomb of the unknown warrior, which was actually the 100th anniversary this week of them being buried. So I think we do glorify warriors. And the dictionary definition is a distinguished fighter in an armed force or a tribe. But I think we should really stick with that other image, because modern warfare is less glamorous than that. And the other only bit of poetic stuff on that horrendous website with all those weapons and training and all that sort of stuff was the pen is mightier than the sword. And it goes on to say, if you carry a gun, you do so for a good reason. But we all know that there are, unfortunately, no shortage of places that we aren't legally allowed to carry firearms. So what do you do when your right to protect yourself is compromised? A tactical pen is a reliable multifunctional solution to this problem. It is made from aircraft grade aluminium and featured a tungsten carbide glass breaking tip. Rest assured, this pen is effective at breaking more than just glass and can easily be used to incapacitate an aggressor, which I thought was quite interesting, a tactical pen. I'm not sure that was what Edward Baldwin Linton meant when he wrote those words about the pen being mightier than the sword in 1839. And what he actually did write was, oh, lost it. True this, beneath the rule of men entirely great, the pen is mightier than the sword, behold. The arch enchanter's wand itself is nothing. But taking sorcery from the master's hand to paralyze the Caesars, to strike the loud earth breathless, take away the sword, states can be saved without it. And I think there's a strong indication that the poet conquers the warrior. And so I thought I'd come down on the side of the poet. I think the warrior always tries to dominate. That's why those American guys see the pen as a tactical weapon to stab someone with, rather than to write some fine words. But there's an English author, Diane Setterfield, who is a lot more successful than I am. She's about 6 years younger. And she wrote these words, which I think really sum it up. There is something about words, in expert hands, manipulated deftly, they take you prisoner, wind themselves around your limbs like spider's silk. And when you are so enthralled, you cannot move. They pierce your skin, enter your blood, numb your thoughts. Inside you, they work their magic. And I like magic, so I'm going to come down firmly on the side of the poet, because I don't think any bomb, any bullet, any sword can actually get inside you and work their magic. So, yeah, I'm a poet.
Great, thanks, Ed. But you do know it's all the Brits' fault that the Americans have got these gizmos and gadgets, you know, MI6, James Bond, you know, I mean, it was, yeah, you gave them the ideas. They wouldn't have got them otherwise, you know, they're just not capable of that, I don't think. But yeah, so inspiration.
Well, actually, I can just say, apparently, the Americans always do the right thing because they try everything.
So you mean they eventually get it right somewhere along the line, even if they mess it up again after that? Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that's the case. So, Mr. Carty, where are you ensconced this morning in your cap? Not hearing you, Trevor. Trevor, we're not hearing you. We're just hearing the plates in the background.
Maybe I'm getting closer to the speaker. Don't know. Yeah, can you hear me, please? Yeah.
Not great, but we are sort of hearing you. Yeah.
I think it all goes back to at what stage do you become the poet or the warrior. And I think I look at this young guy who was a shepherd. And, okay, you know what we're going to do, Ivan? I'm going to talk to you on WhatsApp, on your WhatsApp. Can you put it onto voice on the group?
I'll try that.
Let's try that. Let's use technology.
Just while we're waiting for that.
Yeah.
Let me know when you got it. But Ed, a guy, a mate of mine, sent me birthday wishes yesterday and said, "Hey, Bullet," and I responded back to him, "Yeah, tungsten tipped."
Ivan, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can everybody else hear, Trevor?
Can you all hear me now? Who says the poet or the warrior? It's the technologist. So I was just wondering at what stage does one identify whether one is a poet or a warrior? And, I was looking at this young shepherd boy, David. Someone being attacked by dogs. Okay, cool. And this young David, he had this love for the ultimate poet, and he said, "You know what? I'm a shepherd, but I'm going to stand up to this great Philistine warrior, Goliath, and with a slingshot and a small stone, I don't know what size stone it was, he took this guy out, and he then went on to be the king of Israel, and he wrote all of the Psalms, which made him the greatest warrior and the greatest poet. So was he a warrior before he was a poet? Or was he always a poet, but he needed the warrior to unlock the poetry in him? So, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm quite glad that worked. That was quite good. By the way, Jasper, you need a hat. JC, put on your hat. It's Hat Friday. Do not read our internal memos. Ivan, you also missing your hat.
Thanks, Trevor. So I didn't get the memo about the hat either. And I'm just going to take over from Ivan for a second. He's got some technical challenges on his side. So let's get a completely different perspective, maybe. Nozipo, tell us about what you're thinking about poets and warriors, and which is which, and where are you, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I haven't gotten around to thinking. I'm still trying to put my thoughts around this. I was hoping to hear more views before I come up with my own. But something that comes to mind for me, I don't know if it's either or. I think you've got a lot of situations where they are both. I know a lot of warriors who are also poets. I'm reminded of a book by Paulo Coelho, which it's called The Manual of the Warrior of Lights. Beautiful poetry, and it's but it talks about the warrior, and it's a manual of a warrior, and it's written, and it's a whole lot of different poems that are written about what the warrior does and what the warrior doesn't do. But I'm also thinking about things like the art of war, because you're talking war, and you're also talking poetry. These are the things that come to mind, and I don't know if we differentiate between the two, but I think probably a good warrior is one who thinks. And I want to, in my mind, poetry is very closely linked to the thinking, to the thinkers. And I'm thinking, to be a good warrior, you have to be able to think. For example, you need to think about your strategy, your fighting strategy, and that's as far as I know. But yeah, I can't put anything beyond that. Thanks. So I'll listen.
Right, thanks, Nozipo. Yeah, I'd love to go to our warrior now, but she's running around this morning, as she said earlier. So we'll have to go to our other warrior. So Vinay, let's get across to you. Vinay, she looks like she might be frozen. Oh dear.
When I was looking up just to get some clarity on warrior poet thinking, I don't know, my search engine came up with one of the most horrific rap music videos. I think it was supposed to be rap, and this was just so noisy, and it was, yeah. So I had to really, really use my sleuthing skills to find something about it. But I came up with a really interesting character that I would never have thought was a warrior poet, and that's Alexander the Great. And he actually studied under Aristotle and was a great fan of Homer. And it made me think that there's a warrior and a poet in all of us, and they all come out. Sometimes one comes out very strongly, but I think everybody does have a warrior. And I think this is particularly applicable if you're a parent, especially when your children are young. I think that the warrior will come out in anybody that has a child if their child is threatened, and you will go to the end of the earth to protect that child. Trevor was saying you go down to the base level in Maslow's hierarchy, and that's where you end up. If anything close to you is threatened, or something dear to you is threatened, I believe that if you have the ability to take your anger, and that you might harbor all the time, like Trevor Mel, and you channel it into something good, then I think that is the part of you that becomes a poet. Alexander the Great, I actually then went on a tangent reading about him, but he was a very distinguished fighter, and Ivan's definition that he put up there sort of explains Alexander the Great's achievements like he is the epitome of the warrior poet. And firstly, I think I have a very good balance of the two. I think I can think about things. I have studied a lot, which apparently is one of the definitions or one of the requirements for a warrior poet. And I have the ability to be gentle. I feel very, very passionate about things. And I love deeply. I also hate deeply. But I'd like to think that I will fight for what I truly believe in. At the moment, you know, a case of fighting for my business. It's a good fight, not a bad fight. And I don't believe I fight pointless fights like shouting at taxis or hooting at taxis. There is no point. I choose to see them as the epitome of the ultimate service provider. And that's where I think the poet in me comes out. They are providing the greatest service. They stop exactly where you want. They drive faster than everybody, and they will get you there as quickly as possible. And I just think it's your attitude. You could have the warrior in you, but if you can actually, if you can actually change that into something positive, that will bring out the poet in you. I'm done. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Vinay. Right, Donovan, let's come across to you next.
Hi, morning everyone. Hope you can hear me. I was thinking of the point at which you start a war or a fight. I think a while back when they had these wars in the Middle East or the US Pacific, they call it preemptive striking, meaning they attack before the aggressor or the so-called aggressor attacks. So when you consider yourself as a warrior, it's important at which point you start to fight. You start at the wrong time, you can easily end up losing, and you'll be less effective. So it's important when you start a fight, and it must be for a good cause. Otherwise, you know, you'll be deemed to be classified an aggressor, even though you had good intentions. And then coming back to the meaning of my name, I think I'm beginning to like the meaning of my name more and more, which is Dark Warrior. So I'm gonna start, you know, doing the poetic warfare soon. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donovan. Yeah, so right, I think we've got to get across to our gospel singing, guitar playing martial artist and find out where how that all mixes together in this.
Yeah, hi there. Funnily enough, I almost have no or not too much to say on this topic, because it's brilliantly handled by Ed, who seems to take each of these little topics and somehow find the time and make it a very good summary and with resource material and stuff like that. And after I've listened to Ed, you know, my day is made. I can now go home. But I think, you know, as this thing came up with poets and warriors, I think a little bit of what Trevor Nell said there about self-actualization, that it's almost about reaching that in your life, and whether you now express it through words or you express it through actions, that's probably describing a bit of the warrior poet kind of idea. And my mind went onto a tract of, are they opposite? Is a poet not a fighter and a fighter not a poet? And then I realized it's almost for those, there are poets on the other side as well. There are poets that would describe the world of cowardism. There are poets that would describe the world of pacifism. So poet is almost just an ability to communicate a cause or a point of view. Whereas a warrior would then symbolize as someone who says, I feel strong about something, and then express it through physical actions. But then I interrupted myself there to say, is that really true? For me, the outsider who observed the warrior in his actions, is he really heart and soul in what he does? When I did my military training, although I went flat out and trying to be with the top runners and all the stuff that had to be done, I always had this nagging thought in my mind: who are the mugus on, you know, above me, the so-called leaders, that are making the decisions where I must fight and where I must be deployed. Can I really trust them with my life? And do I feel comfortable that I will give my life to them? And I must admit, I was never comfortable with the quality of people that was in command. So I would then be a reluctant warrior. And although I might have to do it on the surface, but I didn't enjoy what I was doing. So, I see here, I must explain Mugus for Ed. So Ed, Mugu is a South African word for someone that you absolutely have no respect for, and you wonder why they're breathing. That would be my definition of it. But yeah, so I think this whole thing then of poet, I really admire people with the ability to put words to paper and describe a feeling or something that they observe in society. But does it then make them a communicator or a poet? So for me, it's almost the ability to communicate. So, and I think we all have the ability to communicate. Vernay has also said that when she feels passionate about it, she'll fight for it. But it's that passion that probably prompts it. So whether it's an injustice in society or whether it's feeling ecstatic about something that you see in nature and stuff like that, I think that's great. And I think this platform helps us to practice our ability to communicate, whether it's with little little short sentences playing on words in the background there as people talk, whether it's learning how to just convey your thoughts around the topic. So in the end, I think the physical side of things, we may not always have the physical ability, but we all have the communication ability. And I think that's something that must always be encouraged and developed. But I think in all of us, there's that warrior. Just push him hard enough and long enough and start overstepping in his territory and his domain. And we might not even know what our territory and our domain is until someone steps into our territory and our domain. And then that's just a trigger to bring the tiger out in us. So so I've said a lot about not being able to say something. Over to you, Ivan.
Thanks, Jasper. Yeah, so the question is there anything good about a warrior? It's interesting. We talk about warriors, we talk about war. It spoke about perhaps it was glamorous at one point in time. I'm not sure that war is ever glamorous, to be perfectly honest. Not physical war anyway, but maybe not any war. And I think you can be a warrior without being physical. Now, if you think of Malcolm X, for example, I have a dream. He was a warrior of note. He stood up and he spoke passionately. He was a warrior. He was a poet as well, as are many of the great leaders of the world. Unfortunately, not too many of them around at the moment. I think most of the people standing up and making a noise are neither poet nor warrior, just proving how dumb they are. But I think some of the real great leaders of all time were not necessarily physical warriors, but leaders by the virtue of the words that they spoke, which tended to resonate and therefore be poetic. So for me, that's the true warrior poet. I think the guys who come out with their guns and their knives and their dangerous pens, I think have very little that's poetic in my opinion anyway. I think we can be warriors and poets, and I think Jasper's 100% correct. The power the power of the word can create and it can destroy. So I think when we are able to really bring out our words, we've got to be very careful with what we say and how we say it and so on, because it can be extremely damaging as it can be extremely uplifting. So emotive use of language can be very, very powerful. So those are my few thoughts on the topic. So yeah, Ali, I think it's back over to you, and we'll wrap up for today and see what Monday brings us.
Yeah, before I move on to thinking about Monday, I'd also like to just share a few thoughts around poet warriors, warrior poets, and just thinking that, as many of you have said, I think there's part of a warrior and a poet in all of us. If a warrior is somebody who stands for something that they believe in, and that might be the idealized version of a warrior, but Vernay says we stand for our children, we defend our children, we defend, or we are willing to protect, to go to any lengths to protect our own. But I think it's also we stand for what we believe in, what a cause, something that's important and has value to us. We spoke about that. We stand up and be counted. What is it that's in you that you are passionate about and believe is something that you are willing to put yourself on the line for? And there's that warrior side to us. And then poetry, I think, there is a difference between communication and poetry, isn't there? Poetry has that, there's something, as Edward said, there's something magical about it. There's something that draws us in, that's, so this intangible power of words. And maybe we don't have a gift in that, but where does the source of poetry come from? I think it comes from wonder and beauty and our love of art. So even if we can't express ourselves in poetry, when we hear poetry, we know that we're somehow being moved in a powerful way. And I also, so I think there's both warrior and poet in us. But I think it also wonder whether it's, if you're a poet warrior, or whether you're a warrior poet. And I think that somehow that changing one to the other changes where you, and that was, where do you tend? Where do you tend? Do you tend to be a warrior first, that you're a poet warrior, that the fight is at the fore, and that poetry is something that you do to support and to build that fight. The fight is the thing that people know you for, is that you're a warrior. But there's something maybe that I love Vernay's example of Alexander the Great, who you know as a warrior. Don't think of him as a poet, and yet there's this artful person behind that. And then you think about a warrior poet, and I think of a warrior poet as somebody who uses their poetry as the fight. And I just want to end by saying that I'm reading a book at the moment. I've nearly finished it. It's the first in a trilogy by a Nigerian author, Ben Okri. And the book is called The Famished Road. And my daughters were asking me, well, what's the book about? And I said, well, if you wanted to read a Picasso painting, this would be it. It's incredibly, it's bits and pieces of reality all thrown in together in this kind of surreal, colorful, poetic splash of life. But it is depicting the very awful, awful condition of poverty in rural Nigeria. And through these incredibly artful words, painting this picture that captures you by its essence, you are also moved and appalled by the injustice and the difficulties of poverty. And so, yeah, poet warriors, they're there, and we need them because they enliven in us something, and moves us to see things differently and to go in different directions. So that's my 2 cents worth about poet warriors. Where do we go from here? Well, I would love it if, Trevor wrote a poem, and that sort of brought out some great discussions, and I just is there anybody here who has also written a poem or has some poetry with them. And it doesn't have to be an actual poem. It could be just some creative writing that they would like to share with us on Monday.
Lee, Ed sent me a poem a week or so ago, so we can put that one up for Monday. Yeah.
Can we start with that? So Ed, and we'll just be we'll send it in the Wisdom's chats. Is that? And
yeah, that's fine. It'd be interesting to see what people pull out of it, because I don't really see it as the vehicle for a great discussion, but it might be. So I'll be interested to see what comes out of it.
Lovely, lovely. Let's do that.
And Lee, if can I just jump in here as well? I just want to turn around and say what Ed does for words. I mean, I woke up with this thought of poet and warrior, didn't have a clue where it came from, wrote it down on a piece of paper, shared it into this little forum, and it suddenly became this incredible interpretation by Ed and everyone else here. I've just got to compliment especially Ed for the work that he does to actually bring out something out of simple words. And I wrote that famous quote from one of the most incredible life and business improvement books I've ever read, called Confessions of a Serial Entrepreneur. And it's, if you think it, are you playing your drums? My drums. If you think it's already been thunked. And I want to add on to that little ideas that pop into your head. Most people think they've got unique ideas, but what this showed me again is, I didn't know where it came from, but there was Steve Carter who turned around and said, yes, it's already been written about. And there was Ed who went in and did this research. We've got no new ideas. What we have to have are people like Ed and people like Vernay and Jasper and Donovan to actually help us interpret these simple little comments. So I've just got to compliment everyone. I'm loving this. I don't understand where you get all this deep thinking, but I love it.
It's quite easy.
Stop. I don't understand, Trevor. That would have been complete.
Thank you, Ed.
It's really quite easy, Trevor. It's all been thunked before, so it's not a problem.
All right.
All right, folks, have a great weekend if you're not joining us on any of our other sessions today. So we've got another one 20 minutes and then another one at midday. So if you're up for any of those, we'll see you then. Otherwise, have a great weekend and think about your thinking. And yeah, I'm lost now. So we will just cut it off there. So have a good one. Cheers now.
Bye.